I call this committee of the whole meeting to order on Monday, April 20th, 2026 at 6 p.m. If we could all please take a roll call.
Jason Jancic.
Here.
Mindy Hartman.
Here.
Dee Darling.
Here.
Stacy Salt.
Here.
Julie Jetty.
Here.
Bridget Sandlin. Catherine Potter.
Here. Thank you. Next up, we have the acceptance of the agenda. Items for discussion may be added to the agenda at the start of the meeting at the request of the superintendent or any board member upon majority approval of those members present. Does any board member have an item to add tonight? Hearing none. Next up, we have community input. There's no one signed up. So we'll go to approval of the previous meeting minutes, approval of the minutes from the March 9th, 2026 meeting. Are we all good with putting those on consent?
I can't see them.
Yeah, there's no meetings attached. There's no notes attached to our agenda. I
Okay.
can't review and approve.
Okay, so we will have to,
I will get those out to everybody tomorrow. We can,
so they'll have to go back to discussion then.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have discussion topics. First up, we have the presentation of the bond issuance and parameters resolution by PTMA. Mr. Shepherd.
Yeah, so good evening. So as the board is aware, in 2024, we issued about $14 million, a little more in bonds as a result of our successful referendum in the fall of 2024. It is already time to be discussing the second round of bond issuance to issue the remaining amount that is left standing. So tonight we have Ms. Tammy Shalmo from PTMA. I get to get used to saying PTMA rather than PMA. And she is here to walk the board through this process and to give the board an update. So, Tammy?
Hear me? Is this working? Okay, thank you. It's nice to see. To talk about the next sale of bonds. We looked at the draw schedule to determine would it be in the district's best interest to sell all of the referendum authority at once or to sell it in a couple different tranches. And based on that analysis, the board agreed to selling, as David said, most of the bond proceeds in 2024, but there's approximately 5.2 million of proceeds that still needs to be generated under that referendum authority. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight. This slide just wanted to show you, I know it's very, very small, but wanted to share with you this information as it relates to what the estimated taxpayer impact was when the referendum was happening versus the estimate of when we sold your bonds back in 24, because at that time we didn't have your most recent updated EAV and what actually happened. So if we look in the middle where there's the column that says the estimated impact during the referendum campaign, you may recall that the estimate was that bond and interest tax rate, because as you know, there was a reduction in your debt service payments, would have been 8.6 cents. And then you can see what the estimated impact was on the various market value homes listed below, ranging from $50 of a reduction for a $200,000 market value home up to about $136 for a $500,000 market value home. That was a reduction, yes. Then in the middle, when we sold your bonds in 24, this was our update because again, we didn't know at that time what your 2024 EAV was going to be, but it was a little bit better news. So that tax rate estimate was going to drop instead of 8.6 cents, it was just over a dime. So then you can drop down and see what did that translate to in terms of reduction on a tax bill. The reductions were a little bit bigger than what had been estimated during the referendum. And then finally, on the right-hand side, the column shaded in green, the actual levy year 2024 EAV being available, you can see it was very, very close to what the estimate was when the bonds were sold in 2024, but even slightly better news. So the reduction in the bond and interest tax rate portion of your levy was almost 11 cents. And you can see that tax bill reduction ranged from $63 to $171 based on the market value home. So I just wanted to take a minute to highlight how you did compared to what you talked about during the referendum.
Maybe Mr. Shepherd can help clarify this in my head too. So when we get our tax bill, do we see a category for bond and interest on the tax bill? No,
you do not. Nope.
Okay. So, and then when we approve the the budget, okay, in the levy, and we asked for like $32 million. Okay, does that include bond and interest?
So when you approve the portion of levy that we control,
Uh-huh.
right? Our operating funds. We do include the bond fund. We have an estimate of what that impact is going to be based on our payment schedule, which is pretty close. So we do include that in the overall total, but the board approves the operating fund levy, not necessarily the bond and interest levy.
Okay, so the bond and interest levy will be set by the county to cover whatever we have taken out in payments coming.
That is correct.
Okay, okay, thank you.
So here's the existing debt service that you have on your bonds. So the green bars, I'm sorry, it looks a little funny on the screen there. I'm just trying to see. Okay. Do you all have it up on your, so it looks clear to you guys? Okay. So there's blue bars there that show the debt service payments on your existing bonds. So as you asked about, when you sold your bonds in 24, documents were filed with the county clerk to say, these are the payments we have to collect to pay our principal and interest payments as a board every single year. There's a natural drop off, if you will, there in levy year 26, because the plan was to sell this next series to be able to impact levy year 26. So now you're going to see in a minute new bars of a different color coming up so that in aggregate, those payments are approximately level every single year for the life of both series of referendum bonds. Okay, so we built in that drop off on purpose. If you go to slide 5, these are the numbers supporting the bar chart on the prior slide. So there is a drop off. If you compare, you can see levy year 24 going across shaded in yellow. Again, that was set because you had your actual 2024 EAV. So that bond and interest tax rate then was about 16.6 cents. And then we have another debt service payment of approximately the same amount as levy year 24. So it's about $1,438,000 in 24. It's $1,440,000 in 25. And then there's a drop to about $1,019,000. So that, again, that was on purpose so that with this 26 issue, we layer in debt service to keep that aggregate payment between both series approximately the same. Okay, everybody see that? Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the interest rate market. So not like there's not anything going on that's influencing the markets right now, right? Okay, so the gray shaded area, if we looked at this together before, is what the Fed has been doing with short-term interest rates. And the different colored lines represent points on the yield curve for what we call the Municipal Market Data Index, or the MMD. So we've talked about this before. It is the index that we look at every day in the tax-exempt bond industry. So what are the trends in rates? We know, again, gray shaded area in the back, that the Fed has not done anything with short-term interest rates for a little while now. And before the war in Iran started, there was a lot of talk that perhaps there would be an interest rate reduction by the Fed sometime in 2026. And we've obviously been having the geopolitical issues in the Middle East now for several weeks. And now there's pressure again, not only on oil prices, but inflation in general. And the bond market has been reacting, obviously, to this news, like stock markets react. All the markets are reacting. So if you look on the right-hand side where you see the 4 lines, you can see right about where the conflict in Iran started, how rates started to go up pretty drastically. It has been coming down, and this graph we updated 10 days ago. So if I were to update this for you further, what you would see an actual continued improvement actually, and a little more stability in bond rates in the tax-exempt bond market. There's no doubt that as this situation evolves, whenever it ends, whatever may happen, there could continue to be some volatility. But I wanted you to kind of see where rates are now relative to where they were when you sold your bonds in 24 also. So in general, on the shorter end of the yield curve, the 1, the 5, the 10-year bond, those 3 lines at the bottom, they're not too far off from where you sold. And again, if we updated this today, the difference in where rates were then versus now, that would be smaller. It'd be slightly better. Longer on the yield curve, though, rates are a little bit higher, and that's where there has been more of that volatility, certainly as of late. So I guess my message for you is know that there is a lot of demand still for municipal bonds. Bonds are selling every day, particularly for strong credits like your school district. Your bonds will sell. They'll sell well in the market relative to what's happening in the market. but how markets may change by the time we actually sell your bonds, that I don't have a crystal ball for. But I can tell you that the news that's been coming out as of late from day to day, some of it which has been positive about the situation being resolved, oil prices coming back down, on those days, the bond market's been reacting well. So I realize things can change from day to day.
Can you remind me, and I believe we covered this during the first sale, we have a window, correct? And then when you feel that it is go time, it is go time, or is it, do we have to make the call, or how does that work again?
Yeah, so we have a parameters resolution, which is what you'll be asked to consider at your meeting next week. And that resolution is valid for a period of 6 months.
Okay.
So what you'll see in the timeline I'll show you in a couple slides is we have picked a date at this point we'd like to sell. But the beauty of that parameters resolution, as you said, is we will be monitoring the market very closely days and days before even your sale and say, we don't like that day, either because maybe we're hearing something that's going to be announced that could impact the war or something else. But generally, we're just on top of any news from day to day that
Sure.
might impact your sale. So yeah, there's flexibility.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right. So then if we go to the next chart, now we have the green bars layered in on top of the blue bars. So the green bars are the Series 2026 bond issue. And then the next slide just shows you the numbers. So again, this was as of about a week and a half ago. So if we were to sell today, the numbers in that column, that light blue column for your new issue, they would be a little bit lower because the market rates are improved a little bit, even since we updated this for the board packet. So you're going to be somewhere, right in that 1.44 million annual debt service payment for the life of the bonds, maybe even better, but that's ultimately the goal that we have for your financing plan. Okay. And then lastly, just so you can see the timeline, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you tonight and get you up to speed. You will have the parameters resolution in your board packet for approval next week. David's going to have to go through the process to update your credit rating, which I'm confident will be done at that AA level, which is an outstanding credit rating. And then we are slating June 1st to sell your bonds. That is a Monday. And that's by design to try to get out early in the week, get ahead of a lot of municipal bond supply. But the good news is, as I said, there's a lot of demand. But if we get to that point and we say, you know what, we don't like what's going on in the market that week, as you asked about, we can be flexible. But the plan is to get you your proceeds before the end of June. And you can continue with your projects. If there's any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You.
Okay, next up, we have the review of bills. Did anybody have any questions for Mr. Shepherd? Hearing none.
Wait, this isn't really a question I think you can answer right now, but can you maybe send us a note on how much we have spent this year with Allie Hearns?
Yeah, we can look at that.
Okay.
Okay, next up, if there were no questions on the treasurer's report or the review of the bills, next up, we have the treasurer's report. Mr. Shepherd.
All right, so it is time to talk about the month of March. So far, I think the overall message is that the district is in very good shape. I've been very happy with how the budget has performed. And in fact, had we not been involved in construction projects galore, we wouldn't have needed to amend the budget this year. So let's dive right in. As far as our revenues, you can see that our revenues are coming in almost right in line with where they were projected to be. Even the state revenues have caught up to where they should be. Despite what you see up on the screen up there, the state revenues were projected at 71.77, and that almost mirrors what the historical trend is. So I've been very pleased with how our revenues have been shaping up. As far as our total expenses, again, the expenses are behaving just like we would want them to, with a slight lag with salaries. That is due to the annual accruals. But all our other objects are performing ahead of where they are at. And I just lost connection. I have the worst luck with with this connection. So I'm just going to keep moving along. All of their objects are coming in ahead of the projection. That is due to our construction projects that have been ongoing. That is going to keep the model guessing because we have not had wholesale construction projects for quite a few years. When we look at our month-end fund balances, again, it's coming in right where it should be. We're coming in slightly ahead of where we were at this time last year. Our current month summary to date, again, this slide is useful to see the percent change from the prior year month to date versus the current year month to date. And you'll see that the state funding actually was down slightly. That is in part to the fact that our teacher vacancy grant is less than it was in the past. Our federal dollars were actually up because of when we claim for expenditures. When we look at the expenditure side, you'll see there was a gigantic jump in supplies. Why that, or a gigantic decrease in supplies, why that is just the way it rolls. And capital outlay, 859% increase. Again, all due in part to our construction projects. I believe this past month we had a pretty sizable bill go out for our solar project. Our year-end projections are coming in right in line with where we want them to be. There's little variance compared to our projections and budget. And actually, these numbers have started to decrease as we've gotten closer to the end of the fiscal year, which is what we strive to do. Year-end projections for debt and capital projects, really no change here other than some large payments went out for the solar project. Finally, the all-important cash flow slide, you'll see that we're still running a $798,000 surplus. The education fund is strong. The operation maintenance fund is actually has a lower than expected deficit, and the transportation deficit has started to come back down as well. Fund 50, that is a deficit that we are celebrating. I know that sounds odd, but that is one of those funds that has had too high of a balance, so we want that deficit to be fairly hefty at this point. And as far as our investments, we did make another round of investments. You can see those highlighted in light blue. I should mention that in June, we are going to be taking about or up to $6 million of maturing investments, shifting that back to the education fund so we can make a transfer to capital projects. Those funds are going to help finish paying off the transportation center and also fund the solar projects, because those are projects that we're not using referendum funds for. If we don't need all $6 million, the fund transfer will be less, and we will reinvest whatever funds are left outstanding. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, but we were notified, I believe, a week ago that we received the Certificate of Financial Excellence from the Association of School Business Officials, the International Association. So kudos to the business office staff for their hard work. That report would not be possible without their daily efforts. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Hearing no questions. Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. Then next up, we would have the fiscal year 26 amended update.
FY26 amended budget update. Yes. Once again, as the board knows, we were going to end up having to amend our FY26 budget. It is for two reasons. That is one of the reasons why you don't have the full budget with you tonight, because we're still trying to fine tune that particular number. But the two reasons are the original budget anticipated approximately 12.5 million in capital projects. That number seems to be coming in right where we expect it to be. But we are going to make a transfer from the education fund to capital improvements in the amount of $6 million. Again, that is being offset by those maturing investments. that are scheduled to mature in June. And so again, if we get to June and that number is lower, the transfer will be lower. But we feel pretty good about that particular number at this point. And then finally, the second reason, the budget will also be amended to reflect higher than anticipated federal funding. As a reminder, this past budget backed out all federal funding with the exception of IDEA and some Title I funding. We did receive other title funding for this particular year as well. So we're going to include those in the amended budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No questions? All right, next up, we have the food service contract renewal, Mr. Shepherd.
So this is an annual ask of the board. Every year, the Board of Education is required to approve a food service contract. As the board is aware, we went out to RFP in the 2023-24 school year for year one being 24-25. The winning company was Organic Life at that time, and we are recommending that we enter into another one-year agreement. I believe this will be year 3 of this particular arrangement, and we are recommending the board approve the agreement as presented at next week's meeting.
Is there going to be a price increase for the students?
That is yet to be determined. The price increase for student lunches is determined by ISB and the type of tool. It's called the Paid Lunch Equity Tool that they require us to complete. As a reminder, our food service program you shouldn't be profiting off the food service program. So it should be breaking even essentially. If you are running a surplus, then generally student lunch prices will stay the same. If you're falling behind, the student lunch prices are raised. If I had to guess, there's a good chance that lunch prices will remain the same for one more year and then most likely need to be raised next year.
Okay.
Hearing no other questions. Last item for discussion tonight is the discussion to change the meeting dates for 2026-2027. Dr. Thomas.
Thank you. So I just want to start by saying when the committee of the whole meetings happen and the board meetings happen is 100% at the discretion of the board based on your schedules and when you're available. But because next week's meeting requires the voting of the board for the officer positions and things like that, also in policy is the setting up of the board meetings at that same meeting. So just in talking to staff, looking at feedback that we've had, my own personal view on this, I'm just bringing this forward as some options so that you have something to consider. Option 1 being the board can just continue to meet on Mondays. We do the 3rd and 4th Mondays of every month, with the exception of months where there's holidays. And that we can continue to do. It's easy. It's past practice. People probably have that set up in their schedules, which is good. And it does give some time between the COW meeting and the board meeting. We have a whole week. If there's some questions we have here today, we're going to be able to answer those for next week. So definitely the advantages. The disadvantages, I just wanted to make sure people knew too, that there's a couple of changes. It's not always consistent. We always, every year have at least 2 holidays that we don't have board meetings because of the holidays. We have to move those to Tuesday. So it's not consistently on Mondays. There is a short lead time for the board to review the packet from Friday to Monday. So you really only have the weekend. And if you're anyone who has a child in a spring sport right now, you probably don't have much time left on the weekends. Also, Monday, admin only have Monday to answer questions that you give to us. So if you've reviewed over the weekend, we get all the questions on Monday and have to answer those. Fortunately, the last couple months, actually, there haven't been a lot of questions, but sometimes there are, and they require some data and things like that. And we're not always able to get the answer in time for the COW. And finally, just on a personal level, Monday is absolutely for an administrator the busiest day of the week. It's extremely long. It's extremely difficult. And having meetings at the end of the day that sometimes go long, which is fine. That's part of our job, right? It's very difficult because you're dragging by Tuesday, Wednesday, and you feel like you kind of never recover during the week. And we do that twice a month. Sometimes the meetings are shorter, sometimes not. So just as an administrator, Mondays are difficult. Again, we've been doing Mondays for 20 years that I've been here. And so it's fine if the board wants to stick with Mondays, but I'm just throwing it out there. The other option would be keep the same type of schedule and shift it to a different day. I would say any other day of the week other than Friday would be preferable to Monday. So I put in the packet, I think we attached a calendar for Thursdays. When I was looking at this, I asked Dr. Cacciatore if you had a day that you could pick, what would you pick? And she said Thursday, but she was open to any day of the week. When the board meetings happen is when she's going to be here, just like the rest of the team. Thursdays for us would give certainly more time. We could still do board packets on Friday. It gives more time for the board to be able to review. It gives a little bit more time for us to be able to answer questions, but so would Tuesday and Wednesday as well. So Monday is just a really hard day. But again, if board schedules being what they are, Monday's the day is fine. I just want to make sure that's clear. Another option that the board could consider, and maybe this is too much, but it is just something to think about that a number of other districts have started to do, is actually holding your COW meeting and your board meeting on the same night. So it would be one night per month. When it's structured that way, what typically happens is the board meeting for that day would be the board meeting for that month. So if it were today and we had both meetings, the board meeting on April 20th would be the board meeting for April. The COW meeting on April 20th would be the COW meeting for May. So you actually would be doing the month ahead at the COW meeting so that you actually have a whole month to take a look at and decide what it is you need information on, data on, things like that. So it's a little bit of a different structure, but it involves just a single night. It's usually a little bit longer night. Checking schedules, it seems like common times for that, if the board wanted to go that direction, were a little bit earlier, 5:30 to 7 roughly for the COW meeting with the board immediately following. The people that I've talked to who have that type of schedule, generally their board meeting is very short because they've had a month to get information and have information, and there's far less discussion at the board meeting. The topic is always, it always can go longer, but it does then only have just that one night per month. And then leaves other nights open when we have things like negotiations or you need at a special meeting or you're interviewing or things like that. It leaves a little more leeway with that. Again, that's a pretty big leap in model from what we're doing currently. I'm not recommending any preference of any of those. I think it'd be really helpful not to have board meetings on Monday. But outside of that, again, I want to reiterate, it is up to the board. It is your schedules and your time, and you have to be able to be here. And if Monday is just always the day that works for everybody, then absolutely we stick with Monday. But again, I just wanted to throw that out to the board for discussion.
When I first read this on Friday, I kind of panicked, and Dr. Thomas was nice enough to kind of talk me off the ledge. And I guess I have a problem with Thursday. I mean, believe me, the board, being on the board is my most important commitment, but I am also an officer in another organization, and we meet the second Thursday of each month. And on those short months, I would have a conflict. I do remember that Monday was chosen because 155 has Tuesday, and it was felt that if parents had children in both districts, they may want to go to both board meetings. I don't know if that still is as important with, visual, stuff as this was, pre-TV, so, but, my feeling is I would not mind any other day of the week but Thursday.
I can jump in. I also dislike Monday as our meeting night and have disliked it the whole time because Monday is super hard for me too. And so I'm often coming off the same kind of day the admin's talking about with just the emergencies that pile on my desk. And by Monday night, sometimes I walk in here and I feel like I don't have a whole lot left in my brain. So I don't know that I have a preference between Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but I would also not be sad to see Mondays go.
Okay, my turn. Yeah. Okay. I do want to thank you for bringing this to the board's attention, how difficult it is for admin, especially after all of these years. Why didn't you say anything? That being said, I do feel like if we're going to talk for me, I plan things around board meetings as well. I do think that had we discussed this maybe last year, I'd be ready to vote for this because then I would have taken into consideration maybe meetings could be changed to a different day. But I'm scheduled out. I keep Mondays open. Everybody in my house knows that I'm busy. But next year, there's going to be a new board. There's going to be an election. And so I think with that in mind, where I'm at on this is I'm going to do whatever is necessary to serve out this final year, whatever day that is that the board decides. I'll make those adjustments, but I feel with next year, with there being a new board, that this is the heads up that the day may not be Mondays, and have the new board decide. That's kind of where I am on this, but I'll do what the board feels is best. But I do think it's important that we know that Mondays are extremely difficult for admin, busy days and stuff. So thank you for sharing that.
And I will say we have periodically talked about this in the past, but they're always, and this is just how it goes because of exactly what you're saying, Catherine, people who plan their schedule around the Monday. So it is sometimes very hard for the board to be able to shift that. So,
And I do want to say, I personally have asked for more time with the agendas in the past. I have. That would be a benefit, I feel, to the board to have more time, because getting an agenda, getting to look at it maybe at 8:30 on a Friday or a Saturday and not having that, we can email, of course, and you've been fantastic responding to emails even on the weekend, but you shouldn't have to. You should, we should be able to have more time. I do think with the agendas. I did have a question though. If in the event that the meeting day is changed, is it the intention of admin to still get to the board those agendas on Fridays?
it would be the plan. So if the meetings were Tuesday, we'd still do agendas on Friday. Doing the agendas on the Friday is actually really helpful, especially for the business office. We would just be pushing the date of the meeting itself back a little bit.
If
So
it's
we
on Wednesday or Thursday, would we still?
agendas on Friday.
Okay,
Mhm.
so technically, if a cow is on a Thursday, then the regular board meeting agenda then would come out the next day?
Right.
And is that doable?
It's tight, but it's doable.
Okay,
And it sounds like possibly Thursday's not going to work anyway. So if we're backing it up to Tuesday or Wednesday, for example, then that gives a little bit more leeway in there.
if whatever happens, but I would just want that. I'm thinking about policy. I know it says 48 hours. I would just want it written into the policy that would be changed if the day changed as well.
I wouldn't recommend changing policy because there are times that we have emergency meetings and things like that, that if we put in policy that it's 72 hours or something else, then every meeting would have to back up to 72 hours to be in compliance with our policy. So I would keep the 48 for the agenda being posted because that's in alliance with the Open Meetings Act. But the fact if we have it out earlier is still okay.
Okay. Well, I only hesitate because we have been told that we would get the schedules sooner. And for a while we were getting them on Thursdays, and then it just went back to the 48 hours. And I don't know. I was thinking, well, if the board is expecting this, then the expectations are written out in policy. And that's why I thought, well, we should look at policy just to make sure that our expectations are met and that all of us have the same understanding of what to expect, especially because we're having some changes around here. New leadership. I trust you when you say you would get it to us, but
Yeah, I'm just thinking like we had a lot of extra meetings for the board, a lot of closed sessions with the superintendent search and things like that. Sometimes we didn't know until 48 hours ahead when those were going to be exactly taking place. And so things got posted in pretty rapid succession. And we would have been violating board policy probably multiple times with special meetings for things like that. We're not expecting to be doing a superintendent search next year, of course, but you just never know what types of things the board might need to meet about in a special meeting of some sort. So that's my hesitation. I would probably pause that. I have been in contact with Dr. Cacciatore about the timing of all of this, so she's aware too that that would be the expectation. So again, I would wait and not do anything in board policy and make sure that Friday is going to work because it's going to be tight, and just make sure that's all set. But I wouldn't update board policy just so we don't run afoul if we do need to add something and we need the 48 hours.
I understand. And I like this conversation because we're looking at it from two completely different perspectives. So I appreciate you sharing that. Again, I do think a year heads up would be fair. That's kind of where I'm at. Have the next board decide. Thank you.
I'm going to echo Ms. Potter's sentiments about the waiting a year with Dr. Cacciatore and the new admin coming in. They could set the tone and set the culture, and they could find out, they could give us a suggestion as to what may work best for them. I would also encourage us to discern a little bit more about the 1 day whole meeting idea. I think that's worth exploring as well. It may be a longer night, but I think to have the time to really dive deeper into some of these issues on top of some other benefits, like we'd only have Mr. Fitzsimmons here once every month. And that year would be the reason we would do it, but like, I mean, there's some expenses related with that as well and setup. And so I think I would really like to discuss further, if we're going to wait this year, having that cow board combined one longer night meeting. I think that's a really a more efficient way of applying this.
So I actually also agree with looking at it later. It's because there's no way we can look at it when the new admin team comes in, right? Because you want it voted, it has to be voted on next week.
It is in board policy to be approved at the
That's
April
okay.
meeting. There may be the ability to change later. I'm not sure. I'd have to just look into that a little bit.
I wonder if there is. I'd be curious if there is, because I love you all, but you're all leaving. Like, and I'd like to hear from the new people too. Like, every day is horrible for me. I go from 5:30 a.m. till 8-9 p.m. with kids' sports and full days of work and stuff. So every day's terrible. At least on weekends, I can get to the agenda at a 9-hour dance competition where Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm not home. So I like Mondays, but I also think that with so many new people coming in, I'm curious where they stand too, because you guys sadly only have a little bit of time left. So I'd like to wait. I'm not ready to change it just yet.
I can jump in and look at policy. The board, it seems to look like that we could change. Oh, I guess you can change an agenda 48 hours before. So far, all I found is that our meetings need to be published at the beginning of each fiscal year. I'm backing out. I'll come back if I come back and find the changing policy.
I'm also in favor of waiting. For myself, I can say I'm already out to November, but my planning dates are out. So most days like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for sure are not an option. So I'm also in favor of seeing what happens, and getting input from the new admin team.
I'm torn on this. I also, like Julie, am on another board. Plus, I usually have a work commitment like once a quarter on Tuesdays. So I would have to miss one or the other if they happen to fall. And it's usually a sort of second, third, fourth Tuesday of the month. So I'm sort of torn as well. So I like the idea of another year, but I also understand, Mondays are difficult. I just want to be respectful of everybody's
what they sort of thought about and planned ahead, for this upcoming year. So I'm open.
For next week then, in terms of preparing schedules, we have schedules that are prepared for all the days. But it seems like at least for setting the meetings for next week, probably at the moment, we would be sticking with Monday. If we have to have it published by the start of the fiscal year, that does give the board till July 1st. We can set meeting dates next week, but not publish them right away and look a little bit more at options, even if it stays on Monday, maybe the combined option with the 2 meetings at a time, and we can create a schedule for that, what that would look like for the board, what suggested times would be and things like that. And we can bring that back to the board next week to consider, even if the board at this point goes ahead with our regular Monday schedules as we typically do. And then we could have some more discussion in May and in June, as long as we have it fully decided by the end of June, I guess we could probably be okay then.
It sounds like I was reading right. Policy 200, it says the regular meeting calendar. So that's the one we're talking about, may be changed within 10 days notice in accordance with state law. So it seems we could change our mind as long as we're giving everyone at least 10 days notice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, may I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, let me read the closed session first. Next up is closed session for 2 reasons. 6.1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, 5 ILCS 120-2C1. And 6.2, the collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employee or their representatives, deliberations concerning salary schedules for 1 or more classes of employees, 5 ILCS 120-2C2. May I have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Take a vote, please.
Mindy Hartman,
Yes.
Dee Darling.
Yes.
Stacy Salt, Julie Jetty,
Yes.
Bridget Sandlin,
Yes.
Catherine Potter,
Yes.
Jason Janzik.
Yes.
Okay, that motion is approved. Open session ends at 6:41 PM.